Hello again, and welcome to another example of lessons I have learnt whilst learning to play the cello over the last 10 years. I really think God has a great sense of humour, and he seems to take great delight in hearing us say things like, "I'm never going to get involved in any kind of ministry," or "You won't catch me standing up in front of people." He seems to see it as a challenge and starts working out how to change our minds. It was about 35 years ago, and my children had been discovering and developing their musical talents and taking grade exams for a few years. My daughter Tracy was working on grade 4 piano, and I thought, I reckon I could do that. I had taught myself to play the piano as a child, but had never had lessons, so I set about learning the scales, starting at grade 1 and working up to the grade 4 ones. I chose the 3 easiest of the set pieces for the grade and began to work out how to play them. Then, when I thought I was nearly ready for the exam, I had a few lessons to improve my technique. I was quite pleased with my achievement and was quite looking forward to taking the exam. However, I was totally unprepared for my reaction to having to play under exam conditions. As I started playing the scales the examiner required, my brain turned to mush, so that I could not even remember what notes I had to play, and my fingers became quivering wrecks. It was an awful experience, and I could not understand how my children had coped with the exams they had taken. I came out of the exam room and vowed I'm never ever going to take another music exam. I did in fact just about pass, but decided that on no account would I ever subject myself to such an experience again. Fast forward about 25 years to my first cello teacher's first visit in January 2010. I made it clear from the start, I'm not intending to take exams even if I do succeed in learning to play this instrument, I told her. Of course, that lesson marked the beginning of my passion for the cello, that grew stronger as the years progressed. 4 years later, and cello teacher number 2 came on the scene. No exams for me, I insisted, as we were getting to know each other. However, this teacher was more persuasive and managed to convince me of my ability to cope with taking exams and of the advantage of having something to work towards when practicing. By then I had been on several residential cello courses and been part of a string ensemble for over 3 years. So I finally gave in and agreed to enter for grade 5. It was hard work, involving hours of practice and many lessons, but when the day came I found it wasn't so bad after all. Yes, I had played the pieces better at home than I did in front of the examiner, but I did not fall apart or collapse in tears. And I passed. Not as well as I would have liked, but a pass nonetheless. And since then I have gone on to pass grade 6 and was working towards grade 7 when COVID put paid to so many plans. Over the years I can think of several times when I have indicated that there were certain things I would never do, and it almost seems as if God says, "Oh, really?" then proceeds to make me eat my words. As a child growing up in a minister's household, I vowed I would not marry a minister, and I didn't. But God had his own plan, and 10 years after we were married, my husband David started his ministry at what is now the Estuary Church Group. Several of the activities I have ended up being involved in at the church are things that I said I would never do, and David has had similar experiences, where God has found a way of making him change his mind about activities he would not have chosen. If you had told the disciples of Jesus, that motley bunch of ordinary men, fishermen, tax collectors and others, that they would eventually become ministers of a gospel that would change the world, that they would be preaching to crowds of several thousand people, administering healing and overseeing the birth of the church, an organisation which has survived 20 centuries of numerous challenges and persecutions, they would probably have said, "Never, no way." But they did. Some of them were in fact martyred for their faith. and the fact that the church is in existence today is testimony to their faithfulness, even if they doubted their own abilities. Peter definitely had some never moments. At the Last Supper, when Jesus was going round washing his disciples' feet, Peter's response was, "You shall never wash my feet." That's in John chapter 13, verse 8. He was not prepared to allow Jesus to minister to him. However, Jesus quickly made him not only decide that having his feet washed was a good idea, but also that he would like to have the rest of him washed too. Then, at the end of the chapter, he boasts that he would lay down his life for Jesus. When Jesus answered by predicting that Peter would in fact deny him, you can imagine Peter saying, "No, I would never do that." But he did, and it made him realise that he needed the constant help of the Holy Spirit if he was to fulfil the ministry that God had destined him for. So what about you? There are a couple of lessons here. First, is there a failing or some kind of sin that you proudly say, "No, I would never do that"? Beware. We have an enemy just waiting for the opportunity to tempt us in areas where we think we are safe. Second, is there a ministry or an activity that you have decided you would never attempt, or an experience you would never get involved in? Are you saying, "No, I could or would never do that," either because you feel it is beyond your capabilities or because it is something that you find distasteful? Perhaps it's time for a rethink and to see what God says about it. God has ways of making you eat your words, so you might just as well give in without the battle. Your reluctance could mean that you are missing out on something that will actually be a blessing to you and to others, as the cello has been to me and to many other people. So my thought for today is, never say never, especially to God. God bless you.